By now you're probably aware that the sealed 30-ton black granite sarcophagus has been opened, which was recently discovered in Alexandria, Egypt, and made headlines around the world as everyone waited to see what would be found inside. And speculation flourished on the internet and in the news, with suggestions ranging from ancient Egyptian mummies containing riches and treasure, to the lost remains of Alexander the Great, to even an ancient curse that would lead to a zombie apocalypse. But what they did find were the gruesome remains of 3 mummies, or should I say skulls with their skeletons, along with a disgusting and horrendously foul odor red sewage, which I'll be discussing and sharing more photos of in just a moment. But first of all, there is way more to this story than the pictures and the details that were reported by the news, because a few things that they shared about it just do not add up. And in this video, I'm going to connect the dots on some really interesting information about this, as well as share additional photos that didn't make the headline articles going around the world on this topic. Now real quick, if you haven't watched my previous video that I made before the sarcophagus was opened, be sure to check that out, and I'll include a link pop up at the end of this video so you can watch it, as I discuss many interesting details that I won't be mentioning again in this video. But one point that I did make was that the opening of this sarcophagus should be done on live TV or through live streaming, which ultimately did not happen and is a total shame for a variety of reasons. That aside, the process of opening the sarcophagus was very difficult. The pit that it's buried in is 16.5 feet or 5 meters deep, and it's easier to appreciate just how deep that is when you see pictures of it. And you can see here that they even tied 2 ladders together to climb down into the pit. To open the lid, which was sealed with a thick mortar, they utilized wedges to pry it open and then stack wood in between the lid and the sarcophagus to elevate it. But something happened as soon as they cracked it open. The smell of the red sewage inside was so pungent that they had to stop working and leave the pit. In fact, the smell was so bad that at first they thought that the fumes could be lethally toxic. So they put on surgical masks before continuing, and in this photo you can actually see here Mustafa Waziri, the Secretary General of Egypt's Supreme Council of Antiquities, being the very first person to look and see what's inside this massive stone box. And this here is what he saw. The pool of a red-colored sewage that they claimed must have leaked into the sarcophagus at some point after it was buried. So at this time, they decided to completely remove the massive 15-ton lid. And when I say massive, you have to compare it to the size of people to truly appreciate it. But the whole sarcophagus itself measures nearly 9 feet long, 5.5 feet wide, and 6 feet tall. And you can see the metric conversion here in this photo. But to lift and remove the lid, they of course used heavy machinery, a crane to do so. And just look at this lid, isn't that thing amazing? Of course, in my prior video, I discussed the issues involved with cutting and carving this black granite stone, and how bronze saws, as theorized by Egyptologists and archaeologists, could not have done this, especially not with this level of precision. And I also mentioned how archaeologists suggest that ropes and pulleys were used by the ancients to lift or lower heavy stones. And although I do not doubt the use of pulleys by the ancients, it must be mentioned that no pulleys or ropes have ever been found from the ancient Egyptians that were large enough or strong enough to have sustained this level of weight. But that of course does not mean that they didn't exist either, but it's just important for everyone to see what it takes in modern times to lift something of this weight, a massive frickin' hydraulic crane. And while we're at it, look at the surroundings of where this was found, in the middle of the densely populated city of Alexandria, Egypt. So it of course makes you wonder what else could be buried in the immediate area around it. What is hidden just meters underneath these buildings here? And don't forget that this sarcophagus was discovered by accident by a construction crew working on a new building. But getting back to the red sewage that was found inside the sarcophagus, it must be mentioned that in the 3 weeks since the discovery and prior to opening it, there was no smell or evidence of sewage within the pit. We all remember the considerable amount of speculation about what could be hidden inside, and not one single person involved with this discovery said anything about the smell of death emitting from the sealed box. And let's not forget that they were very specific in stating that the lid was sealed with thick mortar. So wait a second, if sewage was somehow able to leak into this sealed sarcophagus at some point, which is exactly what they stated about it, why then couldn't they smell it until after the lid had already been opened? I mean, they specifically stated that it wasn't until after they pried open the lid that they could smell it. And again, we can see that before it was open, nobody was wearing masks, and once they cracked it open, they all did. I mean, I wasn't there, so I obviously do not know all the details involved, but what makes them so sure that this sewage came from outside and leaked its way in? Because it seems to me that this red sewage is actually what's left of the decayed bodily fluids of the 3 individuals that they found inside. They of course pumped the fluid out, and when they did, this is what you could see. Absolutely disgusting, right? What you're looking at are the skeletal remains of 3 individuals, and here are the other photos provided by Egyptian Antiquities where you can see it from above, and also photos of the 3 skulls that they pulled from it. So there's a few things to discuss about this. First is that the only thing inside were the bones and the fluid. Nothing else. No clothing, no jewelry, just bones and sewage. And you can see that came from 2 different sources. So it sounds like these 3 people were essentially naked when they were put into this box, and well, I'll discuss more about that in a second. But Mustafa Waziri also clarified that none of the mummies belonged to the Ptolemaic period, which is about 2,300 years ago, as was previously suggested, particularly due to the alabaster head found not far from this sarcophagus. It's been suggested that the 3 individuals could have been warriors or soldiers during the time of the pharaohs, and they suggest this due to the trauma to one of the skulls found, which could be from an arrow through the head. Obviously, this is all speculation. It could be true, but we really have no idea because there was nothing found in the stone box other than the bones and what I believe to be the leftover and decayed bodily fluids of these 3 naked, dead people found inside of it. Additionally, there were no inscriptions or works of art of any kind within the box or outside of it, which is actually highly unusual. And here you can see a similar example of a sarcophagus of this kind and all the incredible hieroglyphs found both in and outside of it. So there are none found on the newly discovered sarcophagus, and yet various news outlets are still suggesting that the box is from the Ptolemaic period, which is certainly ridiculous. It's beyond clear that this box was reused, and the 3 people found inside were not the original person or things meant for it. One thing that stood out to me were the skulls. At least one of them appears to be a bit small, and I am by no means an expert on skeletal remains. And it was actually suggested that this was perhaps a family burial. But maybe these were young adults, a female, who knows. But again, these people were apparently buried naked and left with no type of inscription or marker of any kind on their grave, which is a bit suspicious. I can't help but think that perhaps 3 people went missing thousands of years ago, and someone got rid of the bodies in a way that nobody should ever find them. I mean, think about it. They were murdered and dumped naked into the stone box, and it was sealed up. The remains are actually now being moved to the Alexandria National Restoration Museum, where they will be examined to identify cause of death and possible age, and the sarcophagus is being sent to a military museum. So here is something that you're pretty much guaranteed to find disgusting / disturbing. Remember that red sewage that they found inside? Guess what they decided to do with it? They kept some samples of it to be analyzed, and the rest was literally dumped into the street. And you can actually watch video of it here on YouTube. And you can even tell when watching it that this guy's face reeked of guilt, and the people watching and taking photos around him, and although they were speaking Arabic and I couldn't understand it, it seemed that they were giving this guy shit for doing what he was doing. I mean, pouring the foul liquid remains of human bodies into the street around their homes. There are so many things wrong with this, and besides the fact that it's an obvious health issue to the people in the area, but they're also literally discarding the remaining evidence. I don't know how much of this ancient mummy juice they kept to be analyzed, but this is a profound example of the reckless, negligent behavior on behalf of the Egyptian antiquities and excavations. Do you see what I mean? With all of this said, it will be interesting to see pictures of this sarcophagus once it is cleaned out, but it really makes you wonder what was originally inside of it. Clearly this thing was reused, and there is certainly way more to the story than meets the eye. I mean, think about what an incredible mystery this is. People went to an incredible extent to cut and carve this stone block, which was more than 66,000 pounds or more than 30 metric tons, all to just dump 3 naked bodies in it with no inscription of any kind? No. There is way more to this story than meets the eye, like I said earlier, and I'm very curious to see what your thoughts are, so definitely leave me a comment and share what your insight is on this, but I'll leave it at that. Hit the like button and subscribe. But I'm Jimmy, this is Bright Insight, and I have many more videos to come on a whole wide variety of topics. Take care, everybody.